Hello, good day. It is a Wednesday today, and it is the 5th of June 2023, and I am reading out of Life as Carola. Carola is the story of the illegitimate daughter of Lord Griffin. She and her mother were banished from the castle. This place in the early 16th century. She was born on the 5th of May 1510. This is a book by Joan Grant. She was a writer of her own far memories. Amazing writer. She passed away in 1989, and I have been reading 2 more of her books. We are in chapter 12, I believe, and it's the 3rd part, and it is entitled The Dark Familiar. I enjoyed being in Sophia's company and often went with her to gather plants. Whether we went into the hills beyond the village or along the bank of the river and through the water meadows until we came to the deep woods, Sophia was always hoping to find a mandrake. Mandrakes are so rare that only the richest alchemists have mandragora to sell. When I asked her what they looked like, she did not seem to know. I said, "How then will you recognize it?" "I shall know it because it will begin to whimper when I approach." "A magpie can speak like a man, but a mandrake can scream louder than a woman being delivered of her first child. It can be pulled only on the midnight of the full moon, or else whoever gathers it will die. Some say that even then it is best to tie it to a black dog which pulls up the plant in trying to free itself. But I shall be safe because I have been told to plug my ears with tallow from a candle that has burned by the bier of a virgin, so that I shall not hear the mandrake scream as it is drawn from the ground. When we wanted to bathe in the river, we had to go a long way above the town until we found a secluded place. For Sophia said that if any of her patrons saw us swimming, they would no longer believe in her, because everyone knew witches feared water and would not cross it even on a broomstick. Although the white surf of the cherry blossom had browned and vanished, the air was very thin and clear, and the water looked brittle in the sunshine. I lay as still as a water lily leaf and let the lazy current carry me downstream. There was an isle of poplars along the river bank. Fragments of dreams awoke to their rhythm. Poplars turned from trees to colonnades of stone. I was on another river, under a bluer, a remote yet more familiar sky. A little swirl of the current washed a strand of my hair across my eyes. It was strange to see it long and umber red, for it seemed that it should be black and cut to shoulder length. Sophia called out to me that I was drifting past the place where we had left our clothes, and I woke from a fond daydream. As I climbed the bank, I scratched my leg on a bramble, so Sophia rubbed it with wild sage to stop the bleeding. I had brought food tied up in a red cotton handkerchief, black bread, goat's cheese, and a meat pasty. I wondered if the pasty had been made from the kid that had died the night before, but I was hungry, and it was strong of garlic. After we had eaten, Sophia stretched herself out in the sun and went to sleep. It was very still on the edge of the woods, and I saw a squirrel chasing its mate through the branches of an oak tree. I lay face down and watched a little green beetle adventuring through a forest of grass. I was warm and contented, and my body was soaking up the sunshine as a sop of bread soaks up wine. Suddenly, Sophia sat bolt upright. She dug her fingers into the turf. Her eyes were shut and her body twitched convulsively. She sucked in great gulps of air as if she were thirsty. Then she began to speak, a babble of words too fast for me to understand. I was frightened. A shadow seemed to have fallen over the wood. I wanted to run away from the voice that came from Sophia's mouth. Then the voice changed. It was a voice I knew. The words came slowly, as if they were formed with cruel effort. Carola, Carolissima, listen to me. It is so long since I have spoken to you. I cried out. Sophia sighed, stretched herself, and knuckled her eyes. She seemed to remember nothing of what had happened. When I asked her if she had dreamt, she looked surprised and said, "If I cried out in my sleep, it was for no dream, but because the pasty lies so heavy." Could the voice really have been my mother's? Why did I doubt it? It was so like her voice. She alone had called me Carolissima. I knew that men could be possessed of devils. Why could I not believe that they might be possessed of angels? Why was I afraid instead of eager? I wished that I could believe that Sophia had tried to trick me, that she had disguised her voice and played the mummer. I even told myself that to believe she had been possessed was to be as credulous as the village woman who thought that Filippo was her familiar. It was impossible to explain how I knew that the voice which had spoken to me was not Sophia's. Surely it was right that I should listen to this voice which spoke to me through Sophia. Sophia, who was no witch, no blood sister of vampire or werewolf. For the next few days I slept. I kept very busy. The axle of a noble's travelling coach had broken, and he and his retinue had to stay at the inn until it was repaired, so I could not visit Sophia. I was sent by the innkeeper on an errand to an outlying farm, and when I was returning through the woods at dusk, I heard a voice calling me. "Carola, Carolissima, where are you?" It was far away, yet clear as the fading echo of a bronze bell. It grew clearer, stronger, and then seemed to die away. Always the same words. "Carolissima, where are you, my Carolissima?" I forgot that I was a grown-up, forgot that my mother had been dead nearly 7 years. I was a child again, a child who had been playing in the garden with her greyhound, Puppy, until she heard her mother calling her. I ran along the path in the direction whence the voice came, frightened, though I knew not why, yet strangely drawn to it. I met Sophia walking towards me. She looked surprised to see me, and said she had passed no one on the way. The next time that I knew Sophia's body was being used by a familiar, we were in her cottage. She had asked me to share her supper and had been showing me how to make a special stew of hare spiced with freshly gathered thyme. While it bubbled in the pot hanging from the chimney chain, she stirred it with an iron ladle. Then she drew the logs apart and left it to simmer over the quiet heat. It was very peaceful sitting by the glowing embers which diffused the darkness. We had been talking, but now Sophia had fallen silent, and I thought she was asleep. Suddenly I realized that her breathing had altered, as it had done when she had slept on the river bank. Her hands had grown rigid, and her eyes were rolled back under the half-open lids. Then my mother's voice issued from her mouth. "Carola, why do you not answer me? Have you forgotten me, as Orlando forgot me? It is so difficult to speak to you. I made your body, Carola. Will you not let me use it now that I am a lonely ghost? You used to trust me." "Carola, perhaps you do not believe that it is I? Could Sophia know of the little chest with the 15 drawers where the jewels were kept? Of the scarlet collar your father gave you for Mimetta? How we listened to the tapping of Isabella's stick of the house in Perugia, which I never found on earth and which I cannot find in heaven? Let me use your body, unbar your will that closed it against me. I'm so lonely without you." I called, "Mother, Mother," but the room was empty except for Sophia snoring by the fire. I had no clear memory to guide me, and yet an echo of an older knowledge warned me that the voice of angels do not come forth from the mouths of men, though devils can command the tongues of their servants on earth. It seemed that this warning was suddenly clear before me, as if long ago I had heard it spoken by one whose voice I had never forgotten. But what if my intuition were untrue? If my mother had spoken to me from the other side of death and I had closed my ears to her? Did she weep in the flowering valley of some tranquil heaven because her daughter denied her? Had it been pain and torment to her to clothe herself in flesh, so to speak, to me? And I had not listened? The voice had been her voice and not Sophia's, the words her words and not Sophia's. Why did I deny her with the innermost part of me, when my heart and my reason believed that she had returned? I used to go into the woods, hoping that in their silence my shining one would counsel me. But I was alone, shut away in my flesh, with only the little that Carola knew to guide me. Even talking to Petruccio brought me no comfort. He warned me that possession was one of the black arts, but why should I believe him? He began to think I was keeping my mother away from me, not through wisdom, but through cowardice. I lay down in a glade hidden among close-growing elder bushes. I prayed that my mother should enter my body, and that as a sign that she had used it, I would return to find my body in a different place and with no memory of how it got there. I thought of a calm enfolding darkness that wrapped me round, deeper and deeper, warm, soft, impenetrable, down, down, nothing, nothing, nothing. Then a terror came upon me, terror fiercer than vipers, more consuming than fire. I was in the ultimate darkness. Round me were clustered the spiders that spin shrouds for the damned, and the toads that echo the footsteps of the condemned. The wings of bats were loathsome on my flesh, and I could not move. I tried to scream, but my mouth was choked with the feathers of the dead carrion birds. I tried to force my heavy eyelids open with my hands. I was no longer in the dark. I could see the sky that had forsaken me. I lived with horrors till I was wide awake. Then I ran to the river and tore my clothes off. I swam upstream, trying to cleanse my body from the filth that had come with the evil that had entered it. I knew how the lepers felt, unclean, unclean. Because her familiar had tempted me into evil, I never wanted to see Sophia again. I kept away from all the places where we had been together, and avoided the path to her house as if it were a leper's walk. If I had not heard the bleating of a black kid, there is much that I might never have understood. When I heard it, I thought it must have strayed from its mother, or perhaps got caught in a thicket. I ran towards the sound, which came from a little clearing among some trees. The kid lay in the middle of a 5-pointed star drawn in the dust. Its legs were tied together with a crimson cord. Sophia, carrying a knife in a bowl of hammered silver, was walking round it in circles, chanting an incantation in a language I could not understand. I stood in the shadow to watch a witch at her unholy rites. At last she cut the kid's throat, her voice never ceasing its monotonous rhythm, and held back its head so that the blood flowed into the bowl. She slit its belly and poured out the entrails, searching amongst them as if she hoped for a sign. Her arms and the front of her dress were dark with blood. After a time she buried the body in the center of the pentagon and smoothed all her symbols from the dust. She carried the bowl back to her cottage. I followed her, and, watching through a chink in the shutters, I saw her smear the blood upon the door lintel and above the windows. With nettles dipped in the blood, I saw her make the sign of the cross over every opening into the house and on the hearthstone. I thought this must be some of the blasphemous rites of the Black Mass, until I saw her face as she knelt to pray. Then I saw that this was no witch propitiating her overlord, but a girl seeking protection from the forces of which she went in terror. I forgot that I had been afraid of her, and remembered only the Sophia who had been my friend. I called out a greeting to her before I opened the door. When she saw me, she pretended that her preparations had been made to impress one of her patrons. I told her she need not lie to me. As she talked to me, I realized that her fears had been more terrible than mine. I did not want to tell you, Carola. I made it happen, and I ought to be strong enough to bear it alone. I never believed in demons or angels. I thought that death was the end of everything, and there were no angels, no familiars or demons, but only flesh rotting away in graves or dungeons, or in giblet chains. I never thought it was wicked to pretend to be a witch. It was like telling tales to children. I may have taken a malicious advantage of their fears, but I was not aware of evil. When the demons first entered my house, I thought it was a neighbor taking her revenge. One morning I came down to find the stool overturned and a cauldron of stew dipped into the ashes. But it still happened even when I covered the latch with wax, so that I knew it had not been moved. I put river sand on the hearth, but it was never marked by any footprint. I made sure there was no other human being in the house. But when I woke, I found the wineskin slit, and the threads of the cloth I was weaving torn from the loom, and the cheeses hidden under the kindling wood. I bought a crucifix and always wore it next to my skin, but even that did not protect me. I paid gold to a peddler for a piece of unicorn horn, which is the most powerful of all talismans. And next morning I found my witch's cloak rent in pieces. I dared not go to the priest, for he might betray me to the council, who would burn me as a witch. I put Sir John's sword over the lintel, and still they came. I wound a cord plaited from the hair of a dead man's beard, and a strand from the left braid of a virgin round the hasp of the bolt. I have stolen consecrated oil and put it upon the thing's hinges, but still the demons come to remind me that they wait for my soul to carry it to hell. Oh, that was the end of chapter 12. Have a lovely Wednesday.